Welcome to another edition of the Arklatex Crime Files. I'm Jonathan McCall. Since 1990, the FACES lab at LSU has been working with law enforcement agencies all across the state to try to help identify missing persons cases as well as human remains that have been found at crime scenes. Today in this episode, we dive into the mission of the organization, what they're using as tools to help solve cases, and what they say they need from you in order to help identify more than 200 people still nameless. For folks who may not know exactly what the FACES lab is, can you kind of talk a little bit about what the mission is of the organization?
Yeah, so the Faces Lab actually has a few missions. Um, One of the things that kind of combines us all together is that we assist law enforcement and coroner's offices with unidentified persons and missing persons cases. So we have the forensic anthropology part of our lab where we assist specifically with skeletal cases. And then we have what's called the Louisiana Repository for Unidentified and Missing Persons. And that is the statewide database where we house all of the information we have about the missing people and the unidentified people. And we also have a forensic art section. So we have an artist who works with us who provides assistance with doing facial approximations of our unidentified people. He's also assisted us in doing age progressions for some of our missing persons.
So you guys, how long has the FACES lab been around?
So the lab itself has been around since the 90s, but the major part of our mission started after 2006 when a law was passed through the Louisiana legislature that established our database. Once that happened, that sort of kick-started all of our efforts to really assist as many agencies as we could.
And how many, if you could talk a little bit about how many active cases you guys may be working just kind of right now.
So I actually looked it up before our call. We have 552 active missing persons cases. These are long-term missing persons. At any given moment, there are missing persons being reported, but those are usually resolved pretty quickly. These are the ones that have been missing for a while or they're considered endangered missing. And then we have 229 active unidentified persons cases.
And those unidentified persons cases that you guys are working, are those you mentioned the fact that sometimes you have remains of people that you just have not been able to identify. Are those the cases that you're talking about currently with those
Correct.
229 people?
Yes, the 229 people are from across the state from the 1970s until today. If an agency is unable to establish an identification for somebody, then they usually come to our lab or I gather the information about that person so that we can try to figure out if they match with any of our missing persons.
Walk us through what that process is like for you, Teresa, as well as the rest of your staff there in Baton Rouge. Is it, do you get a phone call from a law enforcement agency saying that hey, we have this information, we have this missing persons case. We're not really sure where to go with it. Can you help us out?
It's very similar to that. The law sort of helps us because it's not necessarily a mandate, but it encourages all agencies to report their missing persons cases to us. We regularly contact the agencies around the state just to catch up and make sure that we have all the up-to-date information about the missing persons throughout. As you know, there are 64 parishes and numerous police departments. So this is a task that takes pretty much all year to contact everybody. But it's an ongoing process because people go missing, they're found. And so keeping up with that is kind of interesting. But the process itself, it ranges. Sometimes we'll contact the agency and then we'll gather the information. And then sometimes families will actually contact us. So after they have reported their loved one missing, they'll give me a call and then I will gather all the information from them. And then I will go on from there and collect all of the investigative information that we want to put in our database.
What's that phone call like for you personally, or for the rest of your staff members to get a phone call from a family member desperately seeking some type of resolution, some type of closure, who is looking for a loved one? They have no idea where they could be, and as a last effort, they reach out to you guys, hoping that obviously, if, something may have happened to my loved one, at least I have a sense of peace, a sense of closure. What does it mean for you personally to kind of get those phone calls from family members?
It can be very difficult. As you mentioned, it is sometimes that their loved one's been missing for a long time, or sometimes they are recently missing, and those are different kinds of challenges for families. And a missing person is sort of like in anthropology we call it a liminal stage, where they're neither here nor there. They're sort of like in a mystery place. And that can be really difficult because nobody has the answers that people need. And although those calls are very difficult, I remember that there's a purpose to all of this. And because we are able to, we try to give the families as much information as we can as far as resources. We make sure that we collect as much information from them and that they are aware of the process. And sometimes just that awareness of what's going on or what's being done can be really helpful to sort of ease their tensions.
When you talk to them, what are some of the questions that they have, or some of the questions that they're curious about or wanting to know?
Um, Sometimes there's a misunderstanding about what it is that we do. I'm a university professor, so I am not an investigator. Um, we serve as like a database, so we're like a central repository of information, and we assist the law enforcement with anything that they might need. So sometimes the questions are like, "Who are you? Why am I talking to you?" And then that sort of helps to where they understand that why we're gathering the kind of information that we are versus like an investigator will actively look for the person through other sorts of databases and investigative leads, while we're trying to more spread public awareness about their missing person versus like boots on the ground investigative work.
But you
So
guys, but you guys will be called if a law enforcement agency does request you to come out, if there is a body that is found or something like that. You guys will go out to the scene to collect, begin that investigation to try to put those pieces together.
yes, absolutely. And that sort of highlights the reason why our lab is so unique. Because we have the ability to have our missing persons database, we can start to make those connections between missing persons and unidentified persons pretty quickly, versus having to ask another agency if you have any missing persons. Do they have these demographics? If I'm out and I'm out at a scene and the investigators don't have any ideas, I can actually pull up my database and start talking to them about the missing persons that could be the person that they're seeing.
Uh, This was the Faces Lab, first founded, as you mentioned, back in 1990, with the aim of helping law enforcement identify human remains, helping law enforcement solve a number of cases. Can you talk a little bit about the technology that you guys are using? Because obviously, I'm sure the technology has changed from when you first began this mission in 1990 to where you guys are right now. What has that technology been able to help you with in trying to solve some of these cases and really just kind of bring a closure to some of these cases?
Yeah, so there's a couple of avenues that technology has really helped us. The first one I can think of is actually our forensic art. So back in the day, they would create these clay models of the faces, and today we're using some pretty sophisticated computer programs that help to construct a face and make that face look more realistic. And that has really helped us to move forward with publicizing unidentified persons cases. And then as far as like uh, the DNA technology that we don't do DNA at our lab, but we facilitate other DNA analysis at labs. And one of the things that has been really groundbreaking for us recently is forensic genetic genealogy. This is where you utilize those like Ancestry.com, 23andMe sort of databases to find relatives of really cold cases. And that has helped us to solve some of our cases from like the 80s and the 90s where we wouldn't have otherwise.
Do you find that the technology, obviously it is helping you? What else, what kind of other advances are on the horizon or that you guys may be aware of that could be on the way to really kind of help you guys zero in on uh, trying to not only identify some, but even maybe all, because you said you have some people in your morgue who have been there since the 1970s. It has to be tough not knowing who they are as well.
Yeah, it's really emerging, but AI, those types of technologies, my colleagues at other universities are really pushing the envelope about how AI can really help us to look for patterns or look for connections in our cold cases. Again, it's very early, but I feel like that is probably the future of doing these types of cases where um, humans have looked at them and being able to leverage some of the technology in machine learning and those types of things is probably going to help us to better understand why people go missing or why they stay missing, but then also why people are unidentified and might stay unidentified.
Can you talk a little bit about what I know you said that artificial intelligence will play a big role. Can you talk a little bit about what it specifically could do to help you guys out with regards to that mission? Or is that still something that you guys haven't even figured out yet?
Correct. Yes, it is so new. The research that's ongoing right now is just sort of exploratory. So it's really trying to figure out how computers, big data, how those types of things can really help us to figure out what's going on. But for the most part, like what we do is grounded in our basic methodologies, the osteology, so working with bones and understanding how bones grow and then degenerate over time. Most of what we do is experiential, so just knowing, experiencing. So while AI and big data are probably the future, for now, it's more just our traditional methods are really where we're trying to keep going with them.
Yeah. How much information, I'm just very curious, how much information do you need personally in order to begin making those connections or being able to start pinpointing or putting the pieces together of who someone may be or figuring out, answering some of the questions that are still lingering with some of these cases or with identifying somebody?
That's a difficult question. I think it's case by case. There are some cases where we might not know very much about either the missing person or the unidentified person, and then the stars will align and everything comes together and they get identified pretty quickly. And then sometimes I feel like I know so much about a missing person, or I know so much about an unidentified person, and we still can't figure out who they could be. And those are kind of frustrating because there might be something really unique about the missing person or the unidentified person that logically you would think that would be something that would be really easy to find them, but then it doesn't work out. It just sort of we lose steam on it, and that's really frustrating. So Really, it's just everything has to align when we're doing forensic identification because we have to rely on DNA and fingerprints, dental records, all of those things where we can do positive identifications. It everything has to work out perfectly for everything to match up.
No. Um, Teresa, your information, this has been a really great conversation, and I'm definitely learning so much about what it does take because we hear the headlines sometimes and we don't understand, the work that goes into, the back part of it to make these identifications, to help kind of bridge all of this together, put the pieces together to make these IDs into uh, make all of this happen. There's definitely so many layers when it comes to this. My own personal question, what drove you to become an anthropologist? What was it inside of you that made you say, hey, this is something I may be interested in?
So my mother is a nurse and my father was a police officer. And thinking back, I feel like the combination of the medical and then the legal, it made sense later on in my career that having that combination was something that I grew up with. I saw my parents caring about these types of issues through my entire life, helping people and using that as like really emphasizing service. And so when I found forensic anthropology, when I found anthropology, it sort of made sense to me that I wanted to help humans, and so I should study humans. And so anthropology being the study of humans, once I started taking my anthropology classes, it's a four field, so it's cultural, archaeology, biological, and linguistic. And I tried to put all of those aspects into my forensic work because to understand humans is to help missing people and unidentified people because there's those nuances of being human that can really help with understanding this particular problem. I didn't go to school thinking that I was going to work with specifically missing persons because this isn't something that every state has. Most forensic anthropologists do not work with missing persons cases. But when I started working with them, it really made sense that we have to have this cohesive nature between the anthropologists and the missing persons cases. And so, long answer, but all that to say, it all just sort of clicked together. As far as how my career has moved forward and where I am right now.
Something that you just touched on, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is that not every state has what is available here in Louisiana when it comes to trying to track down missing people in these cases. How difficult is that, uh, possibly for you, uh, that there is kind of that gap between states in, trying to find and, piece together if someone, I'm sure you've thought about that. Some of the people that you have unidentified right now may not necessarily be from Louisiana, but from somewhere else. And there are family members who could be out there searching for them right now, but they absolutely have no way of knowing that you guys exist or that there is kind of that gap with information and knowledge of service. How do you kind of rectify that to make sure that uh, you're able to work with different organizations, different states on possible cases, and just kind of get the word out about what it is that the Faces Lab is doing.
Uh, so one of my missions in life is to have what we have in every state. And so when I'm talking to my colleagues in other states, I am really advocating for having something like the Louisiana repository. And some of my colleagues have been really receptive. There's a new repository in Mississippi now. So the Louisiana and Mississippi databases have been working really closely together to try to figure out our mutual problems. Places like Texas, though, like that's a big state. There's a lot going on in something like that. And so each state has its own issues. And for me personally, it's understanding who I need to contact or who I need to work with in each of the places. There is a national database, it's called Nameless. Sometimes that is a little more difficult to use, and also it's not as well known as far as families might not know. It is more likely in Louisiana that a family will hear from a law enforcement agent that we exist, and understanding that is really important for us. Getting the word out. That's the big thing. We want people to know that we exist. We want people to know that we are here and we are a resource. And we try to advocate for our database as much as we can. We're redesigning our website. I want it to be more user-friendly. Our website, anybody can go and look. You can look at all of the unidentified people and all of the missing people that we have in our database. Uh, and I get people from all over the world who call me and say, I want to talk to you about this missing person because I think they might actually be this unidentified person. And that sort of gives me solace that if people in other countries can know that we exist, hopefully more and more people, even just within the United States, will know that we exist too.
My last question for you, Teresa. Um, Obviously, this is, a very personal mission for you. What does it mean personally for you to try to bridge, give a name to someone who is nameless and to, help identify them, help tell their story, understand who they are. What does it personally mean for you? And, you know, after a while, I'm sure you have to feel some type of personal connection with the people that you're working to try to identify and tell their stories.
Absolutely. For me, every identification that we get is a huge victory. We always celebrate in the lab because it's a big deal. It's a big deal anytime we can get somebody identified or find somebody. And so it's not just my mission though. It's like everybody in the lab. We work together we have each of our pieces that we bring to the table. But for me, because I do manage the repository, you're right. I feel like I have this strange personal connection to each of the missing persons. When I see their picture, I can immediately I know where they are missing from. I know their name. So after a while, they do become. I feel like I know them, even though I never knew them before they went missing. So it's and then if we do find them, that is also something that is a little bit different, right? Because I have all of this background knowledge about the person, and I might have had conversations with their families over the years. And so that's different. That's a different thing that I have to deal with each time. But every time we get an identification, it is amazing. And everybody who contributes to that identification, I thank them individually because it is amazing.
Yeah. Teresa Wilson, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about the LSU Faces Lab. If people want to learn more about your mission, want to contact you, have questions, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
So our website is lsu.edu/faces. There you can look at all of the different aspects of the lab. My contact information is on there. There's a link to the database website too. So if anybody wants to look at that, it just sort of explains and gives additional information about who we are. It's really accessible.
If you would like to learn more about Teresa and the work that she's doing at the Faces Lab at LSU, LSU. You can find more details on our website at ktbs.com. Thanks so much for joining us for this edition of the Arklatex Crime Files. I'm Jonathan McCall.